And we're back. I went live without uh, putting my microphone in its place, so I had to do a little bit of that before I came back. Let's see if any of my previous people from this morning came back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So this morning we heard testimony from mostly Seth Kenney, and he was the prop manufacturer that supplied the props to Sarah and Hannah. And basically, what we heard a lot of was a lot of technical speak about ammos and rounds and the different type. There's dummies and there's blanks, and there are certain things that look a lot like that can. One kind of shocking thing to discover is that dummies and live rounds can look exactly the same. Either that or blanks and whatever it is that you're supposed to put on a movie set so that it doesn't kill people looks exactly like the real thing. And there's not a better way of figuring that out by sight. And human beings are incredibly fail worthy. I mean, human beings, our memories are not as good as memories of a computer, or as digital memories, or we have these attention spans that don't allow us to pay attention to detail. And so it seems shocking to me that there's such a huge design flaw in an industry and a supply chain, that is going to be, hello Stacy, that's going to be potentially so dangerous. You're basically supplying these fake things that look like real things, and we have that entire issue with artificial intelligence too. So when you replace uh, real things with fake things, you have to be able to know what the fake is, even if you're trying to conceal it for dramatic effect. You if Especially if there's the potential of somebody being killed, they need to have a better way of identifying these things by sight. you know and that is also the issue with artificial intelligence, is like there's no standards for marking things that have been generated by AI as fake, as or generated by AI, and it can lead to dangerous situations. And that is the case here as well. I have been on movie sets, Stacy P. I worked for Lucasfilm for a year. Lucasfilm, they make Star Wars and Indiana Jones and stuff like that. And I was on the Star Wars movie set, um, for a very, very, very small portion of it, in when they were filming Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith. That was the third movie in the second trilogy, where we find out who Darth Vader is. We find out that it's Anakin, and that's the big reveal. And so I was around those movie sets. I see how I see how they work. And movie sets are a lot like interview sets as well. There's completely different dynamics and different people, but basically you're working with production crew members who have a lot of different technical equipment to work on, setting up lights, setting up cameras, needing to have a perfect light balance, for whatever the director wants, needing to have the right sound balance, needing to have um oops, well, here we are. Here we are, Harlot. So and they should be back by now, but this court, it doesn't run like a tight train schedule. Um, so we'll just keep rapping until they come. Um, and I've been trying to get a little bit more information on this Seth Kenney whole situation, and it just looks to me like it's really hard to figure out who's right and who's wrong. There's always technology. Yes, there's always technology issues. Um, it's not easy to figure out who's right and who's wrong, and it really appears like, hey, Tiggy girl, good afternoon. There's in every industry, in every company, in every department, I'm sure a lot of you have worked in different areas. When a mistake happens, there's a lot of finger pointing, and he does talk too much. He does. He talks a lot, and he does come off a little bit shady, right? But almost everybody, in terms of the people who were involved in the actual movie, come off a little bit shady. Like even the key craft lady, right? I thought she came across really credible, and she's testifying, and that was more of the testimony that we got today. She was testifying that Hannah Gutierrez handed her a bag that looked like it had drugs in it, like cocaine, and told her to take it away. Hey, Marie. So I thought that lady's testimony sounded credible. But it just made me wonder, why is that an expected thing of the key craft ladies? Yeah, I agree with that too, Anonymous. A trooper case is up. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Chopper. A trooper case is up? Yeah. I think that was one of the producers or something. I don't know who that was that kept just saying, I can't recall, I can't recall. And that's the safest thing to
Please continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Kenney, before lunch, we talked about that you had approximately 125 live rounds from the 1883 set that came back. Is that correct?
That's great. That's correct.
And you also testified that the state took 10 live rounds total from your place, correct?
I don't recall that. No, from the 45 Colt ammunition, they took all of them.
And we've seen the pictures, there was 10 total on what was shown today. Do you recall that testimony?
10 live.
Yes.
Maybe we need to approach.
sidebar. Did the prosecutor have a costume change, or is that just a coat that she threw over? I just don't remember seeing that costume on her earlier, or that coat.
Mr. Kenney, do you have reloading equipment?
I don't.
What?
I don't.
Do you recall on the interview on July 11th, 2023, I asked you if you had any reloading equipment, and you said, I do.
Possibly in California. Possibly.
Okay. Does that mean you do have reloading equipment?
Well, PDQ doesn't have reloading equipment, and we don't reload.
Okay, sir, but do you recall when I asked you, now, do you have any reloading equipment? Your answer was, I do.
Personally, in California, there may be. I haven't seen it in years.
Okay, and you know how to convert a dummy round from into a live round, don't you?
Hypothetically,
Yeah, because hypothetically, don't you recall telling Detective Hancock that if the camera crew, and let me just get the wording so I don't misquote it. um, if the camera crew wanted to send a little going away present, and then you described the process. Do you recall that?
no, I don't recall it.
If I showed this to you, would it refresh your memory?
Sure.
It's gonna be on this page and then the following page. Okay.
Which one are you wondering has the soft focus
How far do you
filter?
want me to
This
read
guy?
down?
Just the highlighted portions.
Okay.
Mr. Bowles, is that the July 11 transcript?
That is the November with Detective Hancock.
Maybe it looks like that a little. Yeah, Hannah does look whooped.
Yes, sir. Does that refresh your memory?
It does.
So now, do you recall having a conversation with Detective Hancock about how one could turn a dummy into a live round?
Yes.
And can you tell Jerry, how would you do that?
Well, the easiest thing would be to have reloading equipment press out the inert primer in first, but if we imagine a dummy round where the bullet is actually pressed into the case, and you had an inert primer, you'd need a fairly complicated setup of reloading equipment. You need either a kinetic bullet puller to remove the bullet from the case. If you used a set of pliers, it would mangle the bullet and prevent seating afterwards in a die if you had reloading equipment. So you'd have to somehow remove the bullet from the case. We're assuming there's a BB or a number 2 lead shot rattle that would have to be removed. You'd have to have a decapper to press out the inner primer, and then you could use the same bullet, assuming it wasn't mangled, and you'd have to have a live primer and a charge of powder, and then be able to have the appropriate dye and seat it to the appropriate depth, as well as putting in again the fresh primer, primer installer.
Okay, and then you'd have to get the proper amount of grains of powder in there as well.
Yes.
Okay, and what would that generally be?
Well, historically, I think in the pre-1900 era, it would be roughly 28 grains of powder from memory, if that's correct. And then it depends on the powder as well, all the way up to the case capacity, which means essentially you fill it up all the way and maybe even press the bullet into the case so it's compacting the powder.
Now, I want to go over something you said before lunch on the leathers. You said that these were mailed back from the Old Way movie by Hannah to yourself, and that you provided these to her, correct?
Yeah, they were shipped back via FedEx.
And they were shipped in a box from the Old Way, and then you never removed them from the box, correct?
That's correct.
So, but then would you agree with me then that those leathers were then used on the Rust side?
Food coma.
I don't know that. All I know is that box, and I'm unaware of the quantity in there. I did take a photo at the time. I don't know how many were in there and whether or not they used them.
Okay, so you opened it up and you looked in it.
Yes, I opened it up. I took a picture.
Okay. with regard to the prop truck search, we didn't talk about that yet. When you went to the set on October 27th, you already had the code to the safe, correct?
Yes.
And Sarah had given that to you?
Yeah, she sent it to me by text.
Sarah was technically your employee of PDQ Props, correct?
Sure, she was the representative of PDQ for the Rust production.
And she's the one that called you right after the shooting incident. You all talked for 30 seconds to a minute. Is that right?
It was a very quick conversation, yes.
And your testimony under oath is that you did not tell her to throw any of those rounds away.
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay. But then she did throw them away.
I learned about that months later.
Yeah. And did you know that guns had been transported from the cart?
No.
Did you tell her to do that?
No.
Okay. Did you train Sarah before she worked on Rust?
I did.
And you trained her in what? In gun safety or what?
Yeah, the basics of using blank adapted guns and blanks and dummy rounds on a set.
And I take it you never trained her to throw away dummy rounds after a scene.
Oh, well, I don't recall that conversation or even indicating at what point you would want to throw away dummy rounds.
Because they're rented, right?
They are rented.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Now, you also gave Hannah shells on the Old Way movie, spent shells. Do you recall that?
Spent shells? No.
You didn't provide her 2 bags of spent shells?
No.
You knew that Joe Swanson load Trail Boss type powder. That's one of the powder he uses, correct?
Sometime after a meeting with Detective Hancock, trying to trace down the origin of the live rounds found on Rust, that was part of the questioning of that. I did call him and say, do you recall?
And don't get into what he said.
Okay.
But your impression after it was that your understanding is he loads Trail Boss powder.
Yes.
Okay. You also remember telling Detective Hancock after you called Troy Teskey that he was willing to provide a box and a half of reloads, the same batch from Joe Swanson?
I remember that conversation. I don't remember the quantity of which he was willing to provide.
Okay, so in any event, whatever the quantity was, you knew that Troy Teskey had rounds from the same batch of live reloads from Joe Swanson.
That's what I understood.
And you understood that he was willing to provide those, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a good question, Anonymous. Who spent the shells? Who spent the rounds?
Okay, I want to show you, sir, some of the pictures that have been introduced, and I want to go over these with you. First one, Mr. Kenney, is defendant's L18, and I want to show you this photo. Can you tell the jury what this depicts?
It depicts a shelf at PDQ's office in Albuquerque with a blank supply.
Okay, now I want you to look at the box at the top. It says, let me see if I can zoom in, 30 Mauser. See that?
Yes.
Does that appear, the font, similar to the font on the box that we saw earlier? It was in Lieutenant Benavides' vehicle in the set of Rust.
Well, I recognize that as a Joe Swanson label.
And you have Joe Swanson labels then in your business, correct?
Yes.
Now, the other thing that I've noticed on some of these photos, and I'll show you, but that some of them have JS, some of them don't. Is that a fair statement?
I noticed the JS. I don't notice when it's omitted.
How do you get those labels? Do you make those labels?
No, that's all a Joe Swanson manufacturer and supply.
Okay. I want to show you defendant's L15. And that's, we've seen this earlier on a different angle. This is more of a close-up. What are the boxes to the right of the shelf?
Well, I know that shelf fairly well. There's a mixture of, on top, we've seen a collection, what appear to be 12 gauge blanks.
Okay, and then how about the boxes underneath? And I'm gonna point to these boxes in here.
Yeah, more blanks stored in bulk.
Just stored together in bulk.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Kenney, how about these loose rounds in the bag up here by the firearms? Do you see those? Not loose, they're in a baggie, are they?
Yeah, again, stored in bulk. From memory, I think they're 500 per bag, approximately.
What type of rounds are those?
They look to be 223.
Are you certain?
No.
Okay. And how about defendants L2? What is this scene? Jeez, sorry. What is this scene here? Defendants L2.
That's in the backyard
And what are these?
of PDQ's headquarters, or PDQ's space in Albuquerque.
What are all the boxes there for?
They're just waiting to be thrown out.
And you know how long they've been sitting there before they were thrown out?
Well, in that pile is one of the boxes is from the shipment of the new guns from Pieta. So some of it very recent.
From Pieta before the movie?
From before the movie, correct.
Okay, so that would have been in October, early October, when you got that Pieta. So this was late November.
Yeah, so they've been there roughly a month.
Month and a half. Okay. How about defendants L5? Can you tell the jury what this is? Is that
It's the same view, the same stack of boxes looking to the side gate exit entry.
okay? So how about defendants L6? Can you tell the jury what's in that picture?
There's a lot of empty gun cases. Some of them are populated with guns and other props. Underneath, there's a bunch of locked cabinets with firearms and other various props inbound and outbound.
Okay, so some of these are live or real weapons.
Yeah, primarily these are going to be live. I'm going to say 90%. There's also the possibility that there are other things in there that are inert or replicas.
Okay, let me show you defendants L10 now. And can you describe what room is this in PDQ?
That would be the coffee room.
Okay. And that's the coffee room. Now, is there any ammunition stored in the coffee room?
No.
Okay. I want to show you now L32. If you can tell the jury what this picture is.
That is the bathroom with blanks, and appears to be at the very bottom is indicated live ammo of the gray bins.
And so you've got live ammo, and then on top of that, do you have blanks or dummies?
Those are all blanks.
Okay. So you've got them, and they're not in the same container in this picture, but you've got them all stacked up on each other, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is that something that you would commonly do, is store this live ammo in the bathroom?
No, not commonly. It was just short on time and offloading the Sprinter, and got to put it somewhere quick and get back to Texas or California or whatever it might be.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Kenney, then I want to show you if you recognize defendants L35. That's a box that says 45 LC. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
That is a box that that I populated with Thale Reed's 1883 Cowboy Training Camp live ammo.
Okay, now on that particular box itself, it's not marked live, is it?
No.
Okay. And So the rounds around it and in the box, do you know if these loose rounds are live?
I would assume that they are live.
Yeah, it looks kind of funny, Stacy.
Do you recall what the Finnit's L40 is?
You know, the Stale Reed's green ammo box.
And that was found in PDQ crops.
Correct.
Yes, sir. Then I want to show you earlier. This is the Finnit's L43. Earlier, you talked about this photo. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and I think you said that this was the dummies you had provided, correct?
Before polishing and populating in the white box provided to Sarah Zachary. Yes.
Okay. Now, as you look at this photo, this round up here, isn't that a blank?
Yeah, that's a spent blank.
And then how about this round right here, right where I'm pointing here?
That's another spent blank.
Okay. So this was not all dummies. This also had spent blanks in it.
Correct.
Now, the sheriffs did not seize this. They did not seize these at the time of the search. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. I want to show you defendants D. And if you tell the jury what this is,
That's a maintenance bench,
a bench to do what?
maintenance of firearms.
Okay. So this is where you maintain the firearms?
Yeah, there's gloves there and you have some cleaning products. That would be one of them, yes.
What are these rounds down here? They look like shotgun shells. But what are these? Can you see it?
From memory, that was a project on a previous film.
Okay, and then you have rounds in the back here. Do you know what those are?
I can't see the
It's hard to see.
okay, dummy. I see dummy blanks. Shall I circle it?
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Right there. Yep. It says 45 ACP dummy blanks.
Now, when you say dummy blanks, is that another type of round, or are they dummies and blanks?
Yeah. Instead of chambering a dummy round, it's better to chamber a dummy blank in inert one-piece extrusion, and it's a safer way of doing it. If we have to call at some point in the action where somebody needs to chamber a round that is inert. Dummy rounds are problematic in semi-automatic and automatic firearms, and if upon repeated chambering, the components can come loose. So Joe Swanson came up with this invention, which is a dummy blank.
Dummy blank, okay. And what is these tools in the back? The yellow?
Yeah,
green?
dummy blanks.
One is an
Now we
Allen
have
wrench
dummy
set. The green one is a Torx set.
What do you use those for?
Again, it would just be, actually, the yellow handled ones are used commonly to attenuate the flash of semi-automatic and fully automatic weapons.
Defendants BB, what is that equipment or device right here?
Those are a pair of vices, small vices.
Is that your gun maintenance table as well?
Yes, it is.
Now, defendants S, is this, you recognize that?
I do.
And is this your box as well?
It is.
Are those live rounds?
Yes. Well, the box, I remember writing 45 long Colt and thinking, this is odd not to write dummy or blanks or specify what it is. It's 45 long Colt because it's 45 long Colt live. And I don't need to write live. It's just live.
45 long Colt, okay.
Yeah.
And defendants V, can you tell the jury what that is?
Those are Joe Swanson blanks.
Defendants AA.
So he showed
Um,
one box that
Again, we
wasn't
have those
labeled
Mauser boxes
live
at the top
rounds.
of that font, and that's a Joe Swanson font, is that right?
Those are definitely Joe Swanson boxes and fonts
Okay,
that I commonly see from him.
okay. This is defendants why. And again, let me show you the overall picture. But you see that?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell the jury what that is?
That's that same wooden shelf holding blank crowns.
Okay, and again, we have at the top these 300 blackout. Is that the Joe Swanson font?
It is.
Okay. And you see some of these boxes, they got the JS like on the 9mm.
I see that. Yes.
Okay. That's what I was noticing before, but you said they're on some of them and some of them.
I commonly, I notice, bless you, I see the JS, but if it's omitted, it's not, it's just not something I notice.
Okay, and I want to show you Defendant's X now. What is this picture?
That's that same wooden shelf.
Okay. And Defendant's W. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, that's the top of the black bookshelf that's adjacent to the wooden cabinet.
Okay, Defendant's Z. Can you tell us what that is?
Same wooden shelf.
What are the rounds on the right in this bin here?
Those are small bags of 25, more than likely it's 25 ACP and 32 ACP bags of blanks.
Defendant's U, again, these tools.
It's the same, same Allen wrench set and Torx wrench on top of the maintenance table.
Okay, Defendant CC. You see that?
I do.
And this box over here, is that a Joe Swanson?
It is.
Okay. And these spent shells, what are those? What caliber?
I can't tell from this photo.
Okay. Do you know what these spent shells were doing here?
I don't recall.
Oh, those are the kind of thing that can be reloaded, correct?
Yeah, unless a case is torn, it's become brittle and started to fracture, you can reload it.
This is Defendant's T, and that's, is this the live ammo from 1883, that box?
It is.
Okay. Now I want to show you Defendant's N27, and I'm going to show you that upright, but then I'm going to turn it around. Is that your writing on the blue box?
It is.
Okay. And Defendant's N29, is that same box?
It is. It's one side or the other. Because, yeah, both have a label just like that.
Okay.
Both ends.
Okay. Now, a couple more questions on the prop truck that I forgot to ask you. When you were going there, do you recall telling Sarah to put a piece of tape over the safe?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the purpose of that?
Well, I wanted to make sure that nobody got into the safe before the law enforcement showed up.
One last series of questions on the disagreement that Hannah and Sarah had, you were talking about earlier, and that was over the negligent discharge or accidental discharge, you called it?
Accidental discharge, yes.
Okay, sir, do you recall telling Hannah that Sarah was her boss and not to push it?
Yes.
You were basically telling her to back off reporting anything? Shoot, I'm sorry. Jeez. Sorry, Judge. Siri picked up this thing. Do you recall telling Hannah something like to back off because she wanted to report to production?
It wasn't that she wanted to report it to production because Sarah had already reported it herself. That was the issue.
Okay. But in any event, you told her that she should just move on.
Yeah.
Okay, Your Honor, may I have just one moment? Okay.
it feels like what they're trying to get across is that this place was that the prop manufacturer's place was so disorganized and didn't have a clean chain of custody. They have no more questions.
Yes, Your Honor.
There is a redirect. So that he possibly accidentally brought, transferred live rounds to Sarah and therefore Hannah. Oh, she's another costume change. Must be cold in that room.
Mr. Kenney, is it your testimony
Agree,
that
Anonymous.
the 45 caliber live rounds at PDQ were reloads?
To my knowledge, yes.
And did any of those live rounds that were taken from PDQ have the same projectile shape as the projectile on the live rounds from the set of Rust?
No.
You spoke to Mr. Bowles. You indicated that you had of the live rounds that you took to the set of 1883. There were three projectile types. Is that correct?
It is.
Did all three of those types come back to PDQ?
Once we were I'm unaware because once we were done with the cowboy training camp, I never went into that box again, or even the smaller white boxes, into the gray bin or the smaller white boxes. So I didn't take an inventory after we were done.
And the gray bin that you had marked live ammo, was all of the live ammo that you had at PDQ inside that bin?
Yes. Excuse me. All the live ammo from 1883 was in that gray bin. There was self-defense rounds elsewhere within PDQ that were live. Not
Yeah.
45 long Colt though.
That's what I was going to ask. What caliber was your self-defense rounds?
357, 38 special, and 300 blackout.
Okay. Approximately how many firearms does PDQ own?
Hundreds.
Do you keep all of them at the Albuquerque location?
No,
Do you have another location?
I do.
Where's that?
It's in Lake Havasu City, Arizona.
You were asked a series of questions about primed cases. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
What is exactly a primed case?
The prime case is a case, could be a shotgun shell with just a primer, but we differentiate a prime case from a blank in that there's no additional charge of gunpowder to make a report, a noise, a bang, or a puff of smoke. And so it's a good training tool. It's a loud cap gun when it goes off. It helps initiate action on a set where there needs to be choreography of movement. And if you add talcum powder, it provides a bit of puff to it.
So a primed case is just simply an empty brass, I'm going to suggest brass, I know it doesn't have to be brass, shell casing with a live primer. Is that right?
That's correct.
But it has no gunpowder.
No gunpowder.
And it has no projectile.
Definitely not. That would be a live round.
Can a primed case kill someone?
It can lead. Yes, it can. in a number of different ways.
How would that happen?
Well, in the Brandon Lee situation, a prime case initiation of the primer was enough to deliver the bullet, the projectile, into the barrel, causing what's called a squib load. And in that instance, what happened is the prop crew was unaware of what had happened. They emptied what were supposed to be dummy rounds, and they were not, because the live primer thus makes them something other than. And it's.
But let me ask you this. In order for a primed case to hurt someone in the manner that you're describing, such as the incident with Brandon Lee, there has to be a projectile somewhere, right?
Yes.
And in that case, there was a projectile lodged in the barrel of the gun.
Correct.
Okay. But the primed case itself, just the empty casing and the live primer, that's not going to kill anybody.
Highly doubtful that
Right.
it would cause injury. Yes.
Okay. You said that it sounds like a loud pop gun.
It sounds like, it sounds like a loud cap gun.
Cap gun, I'm sorry. Because the primer has a small amount of explosive substance, and it's that lights the gunpowder that emits the projectile, correct?
That's correct.
Were all of your 45 long Colt caliber live rounds that you had at PDQ, were they all taken by the Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
You were asked some questions about Starline brass casings. Is Starline brass a very common casing?
It's one of the primary sources of cases for Joe Swanson. But I've come to learn that even the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department uses it as one of their duty ammos.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the package that you received from Ms. Gutierrez after she finished her work on the old way. You indicated that there were some leather belts, but you didn't inventory those.
Yeah, correct.
Did you notice, were there appearing to be dummy rounds in those leather belts?
Yes.
Did you inventory those?
I did not.
Were those your property?
No.
When you received the package from Ms. Gutierrez, did it also include firearms?
Not in the box with the gun leather. There was at least one replica firearm within that box. In separate cases, I believe there are probably 2 Pelican type hardened cases that contain firearms as well as other replicas. And the box just containing the leather did not have firearms in it.
But you did receive a box from Ms. Gutierrez that she shipped to you from Montana that contained firearms, is that right?
Correct, yes.
And those were shipped to you because they were your firearms, right?
Some of them were, yes. Some of them were also Thales.
Okay. When you received the box that contained the firearms, was there anything concerning about the state they were in?
Yes. The primary concern is that some of them were loaded.
This is why I like to watch with y'all, because so many people know so many more things. And this is a topic I am absolutely not educated on whatsoever. The different types of guns, the different types of gun powders, even when you're saying the word caliber, what does it freaking mean? the reasons to have, you know, a hollow point versus a personal defense, how they're made and why they're made that way. It's very interesting. It's very, you know, and it helps. And it also helps to know what you don't know. And this is something I definitely do not know about. And honestly, one of the reasons I wanted to watch this trial, it's interesting on a number of levels, right? This is really kind of the second trial we're watching in, you know, a few months, where the person who pulled the trigger is not the one on trial at the moment. The person who's on trial is somebody who committed negligence that potentially contributed to the crime with regard to gun stuff.
Mr. Kenney, you said that some of the guns were loaded.
Yes.
What were they loaded with?
What I found out that they were loaded with dummy rounds in the end.
And why was that concerning to you, that the guns had been shipped to you loaded with dummy rounds? So whenever you're ready, I'm ready. Okay.
Well, because the assumption is that one, guns are always loaded unless you verify that they are not, and two, that rounds are live unless you validate that they are dummy rounds. And the fact that that a couple, I believe it was from memory, a couple of revolvers were loaded with rounds leads me to default that I have to assume these are live rounds until I validate that each and every one of the rounds are dummy rounds and that the guns are completely empty. So there was some sweaty palms that moment.
Okay. I'm going to shift gears here. I'm going to show you what is already in evidence as State's Exhibit 168. I want you to have a look at this photo and tell me if the projectile shapes that you described to Mr. Bowles are present in this photo.
It looks 99% are semi-wad cutter bullets. Oddball right in the middle of the photo.
Where can you use your screen? Oh, that's the oddball. Okay, sure.
Yeah, that has a projectile that I don't remember seeing. It's neither a semi-wad. They probably would consider that some variation of a wad cutter, but it almost looks like a truncated cone type projectile.
Okay, and you had and truncated cones were one of the projectiles that you recall from 1883, correct?
Yeah, the cowboy training camp.
All
Yes.
right. I'm going to show you what's already in evidence as State's Exhibit 171. How would you describe those?
That's another variation of a semi-wad cutter.
Okay. Would you consider that a truncated cone?
No.
All right. I'm going to show you what is already in evidence as State's Exhibit 57. Would these be a primed case?
Well, I can't see what's on the opposite end away from the nickel primer. Is there a projectile on the end?
For the purposes of this question, let's assume that there is no gunpowder in those casings and there is no projectile at the other end.
Yeah, I would call these a spent case because the primers have been hit. But at the same time, we have to assume that any primer is potentially live, even though it's been struck, because it could be a hard primer. But easily, commonly, if somebody, the layman took a look at this picture and said, well, what is that? I would say a spent case casually, but I would not make a dummy round out of that.
Sure. In order for a primed case to be a primed case, it has to have an unstruck primer, correct?
Yes, and we assume that it's not an inert prime case. If we're saying, we need to initiate some kind of action with the least amount of noise, I would call up Joe Swanson and say, I need a box of 50 prime cases.
Okay. But those don't appear to be that to you, do they?
They don't. I don't know what that is, to be honest with you. It could be in the providing weapons and blanks and dummy rounds to production for film. I don't know what that is. I mean, casually, I would say, if I was just a shooter out there, I would say, oh, it's a spent case.
Right. It looks like a spent casing.
Yeah.
All of the dummies that you provided to the set of Rust, the 45 long Colt dummies that came directly from you, did all of them rattle?
Yes.
Did you provide any dummy rounds to the set of Rust that did not rattle?
I did.
Which ones were those?
Those were the 44 Henry copper plated rounds.
And those are completely different looking than any of the 45 long Colt dummies, correct?
Correct. They haven't made 44 Henry since the pre-1900.
So the 44 Henrys, how do you know that those are dummies?
Well, they don't make them anymore, and
how do you know they're dummies if they don't rattle?
It's a problem. You assume that they're live. Then
is there a hole in the side? How do you know it's a dummy?
You don't. That's a problem.
There's no hole in the side.
There's no hole in the side.
Do you know whether or not, did you say they were 4470s?
44 Henry.
44 Henry. Do you know whether any of the 44 Henrys were ever even used on the set of Rust?
No.
You don't know?
Me too, Stacy.
And to be clear, the 44 Henrys don't have a traditional primer. You cannot reload them. They're like a 22 rimfire. It's the same thing. It's just an oversized version of that.
All right. You were asked some questions about how many times you called Detective Hancock. Why did you call her so many times?
Just to aid in the investigation, whatever she needed, or if I found something that I thought she might want to see, or if I had any questions. It was routine for us to be in communication.
Okay. You made a statement on cross-examination that you didn't want to work. I think it was in a text message, maybe, that you didn't want to work with Ms. Gutierrez in the future. Is that correct? Do you recall making that statement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Why didn't you want to work with her in the future?
Well, the issue of loading a full load blank with a horse in the vicinity is a huge violation of an armorer's work.
So why don't you explain to the jury what you're talking about? Because I don't think that we've addressed that issue yet. Was there an issue that came to your attention with regard to the set animals and a full load blank?
There was several days prior, and I don't know exactly when it happened. Sarah Zachary called to discuss a number of things, including her concern.
And I'm gonna stop you right there.
Oh,
I got it.
Yep.
Did you receive information that there was an issue with a full load blank and an animal?
Yes.
Okay, stop there. Generally speaking, explain to the jury what types of blanks are to be used around animals, what types are not, and why, having nothing to do with what happened on Rust.
In general, we have several iterations of blank loads. And the idea is that we always want to use the least amount of noise and gunpowder for the effect necessary. And so if ultimately we could get away with using nothing but a prime case, that would be ideal. You know,
Sir, in terms of blanks, what are the appropriate size blanks to use around horses on a movie set?
horses and kids, no greater than 1/4 load.
So is there a blank load that is less than a 1/4 load?
There is 1/8 as well. Yes.
Okay. Why is it not advisable to use full load blanks around set animals?
Well, it's frankly, it's considered animal cruelty.
Oh, so they're bringing up a whole other incident here that Sarah apparently was concerned with, where a full point blank, basically a full blank was being loaded in around animals, and you're not supposed to do that because blanks in that are loaded that way, hey Adrian, are dangerous, and you're not supposed to fire them around animals and children, and probably because of how loud they are and how they can create a a noise issue. And so that's what they're bringing up, is that apparently happened. And there were apparently two other accidental discharges on this set before this actual death took place. And now we're hearing about a whole other situation where the guns were being mishandled. So I feel like what the defense was trying to do with this guy, Seth Kenney, is say he's the one who brought them in because he wasn't organized enough. But ultimately, it's the
Okay, Mr.
armorer's
Kenney,
job
we're
to
gonna
make
move on.
sure they're not handing
You were
over
asked some
dangerous
questions about
weapons.
making dummy rounds into live rounds. Do you recall those questions from Mr. Bowles?
I do.
So it sounds like that would be a bit of a complicated process. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the opposite. Would it be considerably easier to turn a live round into a dummy?
It would be not. It would be. It's not the ideal situation, again, especially if we're talking about.
I'm not asking what's ideal. I'm asking, would it be easier?
There's one less step. Well, no, actually, we're excluding. You'd have to press out the primer. It's less complicated.
So if one were to try to turn live rounds into dummy rounds, would they need any special equipment?
They would need full reloading.
I'm just asking you if they would need special equipment.
Yes.
Is one of the pieces of equipment that they might need an inertia puller?
A bullet puller, yes. A kinetic puller would be one of them, yes.
All right, thank you. You were asked some questions about your training of Ms. Zachary. Did you train Ms. Zachary specifically on how to handle a single action army revolver?
No.
You were shown a series of photos and asked about Joe Swanson labels. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Mr. Ball's going to come up here real quick.
And I'm glad you're here. Remember to hit the thumbs up. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. So again, I'm getting the sense that the defense is trying to say it was this guy's fault. This guy ended up accidentally providing live rounds to the prop master and the armorer.
All right. I'm going to show Mr. Kenney States Exhibits 193 through 208, and I don't believe there's an objection, and I would ask for permission to publish.
No objection, Your Honor.
Page 193.
To what? 208
208.
is admitted, you may publish.
Now, Mr. Kenney, for the purposes of these questions, I want you to think back to the photo that you saw of the Joe Swanson box that was taken from the set of Rust. Do you recall the photo I'm talking about? If not, I'll show it to you again.
The one on the prop cart, just to be clear.
Yes,
Yes?
the dummies,
Yes.
Joe Swanson dummies
Yes.
with the JS in the middle.
Yes.
And you indicated that you have never had a box that had that kind of label.
Correct.
So,
Specifically 45 long colt.
well, let's go through them. States Exhibit 193, are those labels just like the one from the set of Rust?
Well, no.
Right, that's not a trick question.
Seems like it.
How about these? States Exhibit 194, are those just like the ones from the set of Rust?
No.
Same question here, 195. We've got several boxes. If you need me to zoom in on anything, I'm happy to.
No. It's yes. No, I don't. Need you to zoom.
Are any of those the same as the box from Rust?
No.
These, are any of these the same as the box from Rust?
No.
How about these?
This
No.
is a good
And that's for
redirect.
the record, States Exhibit 197. States Exhibit 198, how about these?
No.
States Exhibit 199, how about these?
No.
States Exhibit 200, same question.
No.
States Exhibit 201, same question.
No.
States Exhibit 202, over on the left, same question.
No.
States Exhibit 203, same question.
No.
States Exhibit 204.
No.
States Exhibit 205.
No.
States Exhibit 206.
No.
States Exhibit 207.
No.
States Exhibit 208.
No.
You testified that you provided some fake guns to for Rust. Is that right?
Yes. Replica guns. Yes.
Did you provide any fake long guns for the set of Rust?
No.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Your Honor, I have two follow-up.
All right.
Rebuttal.
Kenny, just two follow-up. With regard to turning a live into a dummy, you talked about one piece of equipment. What other equipment would you need to do that?
Well, you need a piece of equipment to press out the primer. You'd need, a press and reload it and installed with a proper reloading dies. You would need some way of measuring powder as well, potentially dispensing the powder. And then you need a piece of equipment to load the primer into the case.
Okay. Now, I think you testified that you didn't train Sarah Zachary on the use of the single action revolver,
Correct.
and she was under your license. So was she not permitted to use that?
No, she was permitted.
Okay. Even without the training?
Well, a cold gun. It's a good question. I don't recall going over. I just don't remember training her to check for safe on a single action army. I think, the thinking was, is Hannah's the armor. She's going to take care of it.
Okay, but you did train her with regard to, I mean, you did certify her on your paperwork.
Well, there's no certification.
Okay, not certification, but you did have her on your paperwork.
Correct.
All right, you're excused.
Thank you, Your
Thank you.
Honor.
Next witness.
Just 1 minute to check the list.
So yeah, I'm not sure if the defense got where they wanted to go with that witness.
The state will briefly recall Corporal Hancock.
Oh, they're recalling a witness. Must be
Her
interesting.
doing okay? Do you need to ask him for a case? Okay, sort of, something. I can't hear you.
Mr. Judge, raise your right hand.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
George, I think this person. You ready now? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Adrian.
Corporal, thank you for your second round on the witness stand. As a sworn law enforcement officer, are you familiar with the crime of negligent use of a firearm?
Yes.
And what are the different ways that the elements of negligent use of a firearm can be fulfilled?
Can we approach?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. So she's about to hammer home what is negligent use of a firearm, which is a charge here. And, it really does get down to you have an armorer on set for this very specific purpose. It's to make sure that the guns you are handing off to the actors to use are safe. And they're safe for the shot that they're about to do, for, the take that they're about to do in these scenes. And yes, what they did was they hired this very young and very inexperienced armorer. And put a lot of responsibility in her hands, and under the large umbrella of negligence, that's part of the negligence, and I see that as part of the negligence with the production crew. Doing a low budget movie, and when you cut costs in the safety area, you're gonna come up with safety issues, and finally the law's gonna come after that. Yeah, I know, right? Solo Sock. Oh well, it's her dad, so she must already be born with all these skills that you really have to learn. You have to go to school, some sort of school, to learn, right? Maybe it's a informal school, a casual school, but still you need to know how to do these things. It's kind of like, I kind of wish that there were mandatory parenting classes that probably violates people's rights in one way, shape, or form. But like, we were not all raised to be able to know how to raise kids properly, or, even on a basic level. So parenting classes it's almost like you should have a driver's license to have be a parent.
All rise.
Oh, they're going to take a break again. Maybe it's maybe. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's maybe. So it looks like they're going to take an afternoon break. Not sure how long this will be. It might be because there are some disputes to go through. They all seem to be looking over very intently. Maybe is it at the jury? Is something happening with the jury? I am super curious about how the jury is taking all this in. Now they're sitting down again. Let's see if they have this conversation in front of us. Looks like maybe not. Yeah, wake her up a bit. Yeah, who needs swimming lessons when you could just be thrown in and told, swim, swim, you know how to swim. I mean, that used to be a thing. That used to be, oh, my dad just threw me in the ocean and said swim, and so I swam. And I'm sorry, but I remember when I had kids of my own, I'm like, there's no way I'm just going to throw my kid into the pool and say swim. I almost drowned myself at the shallow end of a pool once when I was a kid. So, my goodness. So what we've heard today is that this girl not only possibly handed a bag of cocaine to the key craft services lady to get rid of evidence, but she also, when she mailed back the props to PDQ from a different movie, she returned props that didn't belong to that prop master. And she returned props that had been, loaded with blank rounds, which was in and of itself a dangerous thing to do. And it was really badly managed and handled, gun safety practices by this armorer who, at a certain point in your life, when you are taking on a job of this kind of importance, you have to grow up and realize that all the tedious steps that you take to ensure safety are important. And yes, they're tedious. And yes, they're frustrating. And yes, it may seem like overkill to have to do these, all these incessant safety checks. But then when you do that, you don't end up with a dead cinematographer from an accident. And as I think about the charges in this, and I think about what evidence has come out, I'm feeling very strongly that this is going to be a guilty verdict. Because it just appears that there was so much negligence. And that's not to say that Hannah is the only person who deserves a guilty verdict in this situation. But, the people who are responsible for ensuring that these things didn't happen didn't ensure that these things didn't happen. I mean, that's the entire reason to have an armorer there. The armorer is supposed to be an expert, a gun expert. And not only is the armorer supposed to be a gun expert, they're supposed to be a prop gun expert, the kind of expert that knows the difference between looking at dummies and looking at blanks and determining what is a blank, what is a dummy, what is a live round, what kind of which bullets go into which guns and all that type of stuff. So it's not just knowing about guns in general, it's knowing all the technicalities of how to make sure that a gun that you're using as a prop is safe. And there's a lot of technicalities to that. And it does appear like she was a total fuck up. And it sounds like her dad was, getting old and moving close to retirement age. And he's so old and somewhat frail that when they were filming on 1883, I think it is, that they needed a special tent for him for the heat. So he's getting on in years. And so he's trying to pass the mantle on to his daughter. But again, this is not something, this is, you don't get special DNA that says I'm an armorer. It would be nice. It would be nice if we could get special DNA that, comes with a special skill set that can really only be taught, but that isn't the way it works. All she had was the DNA of somebody who was a professional for a long time and probably was around it for a while. But, my mom worked in the tech industry also for 40 years. It doesn't mean that I came around with all the same exact skill set that she did. It's just a foot in the door. Right? And that's all it really should be, is a little bit of a foot in the door with a reference like, this person, you can trust them. But, her whole persona doesn't really exude confidence and trust in her as a person who really cares. Like her demeanor and her attitude is very flip and casual, and they probably were or old. They probably had earplugs for them. I don't know. I don't know. But I think it'll be interesting. I do think that both of these lawyers are really good and they do a good job. I don't know that the defense attorney has a lot to work with. Because ultimately what they're trying to figure out is, where did the live rounds come from? And when everybody isn't being honest, and you have a prop master who actually threw some blanks away or threw some stuff away, right? You realize that everybody's being a little bit shady, and it's hard to tell where the truth really lies. The truth really lies somewhere in between what Seth Kenney says, what Sarah says, and what Hannah says, and what all the other people say. And so the jury, as the triers of fact or the finders of fact, has to be the ones to figure that out based on credibility and whatnot, and what lines up with the facts of the case. And I think maybe after this detective is re-questioned for the second time, probably after this particular witness, they're going to rest their case, because they have talked about how Seth Kenney was their final witness. At least that's my understanding. So that he was going to be the final witness, and then they were going to rest, but then they brought up this detective to redirect some of the way the testimony was going. And I thought that the prosecution's redirect on all the questions about the pictures of the guns with and all the pictures that were in the PDQ headquarters, that she was basically saying, the defense was saying hey, don't these boxes look like the ones that came back with live rounds or something like that? Don't all these boxes look the same? And aren't all these boxes representative of the fact that things could look the same and you could ship things out that look all the same and could be confusing? And what the redirect from the prosecution was doing was saying none of the boxes in your warehouse look like anything that came back with live rounds, right? Yeah, it seems like I wonder why Sarah wasn't charged. I mean, maybe hiding, throwing out evidence. That seems like it should be a charge in and of itself, right? And it's possible that they did charge her and we just don't know it. And she pled down or got some sort of immunity or consideration by testifying in this trial because they felt that what she did was not as bad as what Hannah did. Sometimes it's hard. This does come up a lot in these trials, right? As we watch these trials and we watch different witnesses testify, a lot of times the witnesses seem like they could have some culpability too. And we're kind of left to wonder, why wasn't this particular witness charged? And a lot of times we don't get to find out why particular people were charged and why particular people weren't charged. Do I think Hannah will testify? I don't think so. Exactly. Like, why did Kayla not get charged? Well, my understanding of that, Chopper, is that she could still get charged. She could still get charged because whatever agreement they made with Kayla was you testify honestly, and then we will take that into consideration. And I agree. I think she should get some sort of culpability in that baby's murder. Absolutely. And it feels like to me that they know that she has more involvement than came out in court. I mean, they have to know. They have to know the more involvement that she had or didn't have. They always know more than we do. Unfortunately. But anyway, do I think that Hannah will testify? I agree. I doubt she'll testify. I think it wouldn't work very well in her favor. She doesn't seem like she'd be a good witness for herself. She comes across kind of whiny and entitled, in all honesty. I mean, at least she's there. At least she's there every day, unlike Montgomery, right? But
All right, you may be seated.
All right, Corporal, we're going to move on. Were you present in the courtroom when Mr. Haig was doing his demonstration with his single action army?
Yes, I was.
And as a trained law enforcement officer, are you proficient in firearms?
Fairly proficient.
Have you been able to access that gun that Mr. Haig was using for his demonstration today?
Yes.
And did you attempt to view the barrel of the gun without removing the cylinder?
Yes.
Were you successful?
Yes.
You were?
Well, sorry, in looking at it, yes, but not fully.
Okay. So why don't you explain to the jury what you did in order to try to do a barrel check for debris or items in the barrel without removing the cylinder?
Okay. So with the revolver that Mr. Higg had brought in, what I did was essentially I took the hammer to half cock, which would allow that cylinder to spin freely. So then I tried to look down the barrel, kind of from the side of that revolver. You can see a little bit of light shining through it, but you cannot fully see like an unobstructed barrel view when you're looking down it. So it's essentially what I would kind of consider looking like at a corner. So you're not really able to see, parts of that corner. Next, I pulled the hammer fully back all the way to see if you could see where the firing pin goes into that cylinder. So I tried to look down that way to see if I could see the entirety of the barrel. Again, that hole it's too small. I could see light shining through, but not enough to where I could say that the barrel was, completely empty, or that I would be confident enough to say that there wasn't anything in the barrel. And then the last thing that I did uncomfortably is I actually took that revolver and with it at the full cock position, I actually looked down the barrel of that gun and used a light source because it was really hard to see in it with it being, it's dark, it's a darker barrel. So I looked, actually had that barrel pointing at my face
Very
and
uncomfortable.
to try to look down it, too dark to see it just normally. So I used a light source to try to look down. But again, when you're shining that light source down the barrel, you're having to move in different directions. So personally, I wouldn't comfortably say that that the barrel would be free of anything like debris or any sort of particles in those checks.
All right, thank you. Shifting gears, are you familiar with the name Brian Norvell?
Yes.
And do you know whether or not he was interviewed in this case?
Yes.
You know, or he was?
He was.
Okay. And were the defense attorneys present for that interview?
Yes, they were.
Have you listened to the entire interview?
Yes, I have.
Did the defense, and let me ask you, in terms of let's go back to State's Exhibit 2, in terms of Mr. Benavidez's video, who is Brian Norvell on that video?
So in that lapel video, Brian Norvell is the individual that brings that prop cart over in front of the patrol unit to Lieutenant Benavidez. And he's the same individual that reaches his hand over the crime scene tape to pick something up off the cart.
Approximately how long was the interview that you listened to?
It was about an hour and 45 minutes, give or take.
Did anyone from the defense ask Mr. Norvell any questions?
No.
Were you present in the courtroom when Mr. Bowles asked Mr. Kenney approximately how many times he called you? And I think Mr. Kenney agreed it was approximately 40 times.
Yes.
How many times did Mr. Bowles call you?
Quite a bit. Not just calls, but also
Oh,
emails
snap.
and text messages.
Would you say it was more than 40 times?
I'd say at least around there.
And how many times have I called you?
A handful, maybe between 5 and 10.
All right, thank you. I'll pass the witness. Oh, sorry.
Right. So Mr. Bowles was trying to throw shade at Seth Kenney for making several calls to the detective. And so that it throws everything into question when Mr. Bowles is making the same number of calls. And they're just having a good old time at the bench. Why are they having such a great old time at the bench?
Cross exam.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Corporal Hancock, isn't it true that I'm representing Ms. Gutierrez-Reed in this case, and I called you and emailed you in that capacity?
Yes.
And Seth Kenney, on the other hand, is a potential suspect in the case, right?
According to who?
Well, you're the investigator. Did you ever look at him as a potential suspect?
Yeah, he was investigated.
And you
Okay,
represent
so
the
that's
suspect.
what I'm asking you. Do you normally talk to potential suspects that many times in a case?
I don't think there's a limit to how much we talk to them.
With regard to the barrel obstruction you looked at, and you did that, you're not an expert in inspecting firearms.
No.
And you said you're fairly proficient, but you don't know, for example, the tools that are used. You didn't have a tool with you?
No, that was just by eye.
Okay. So you just did kind of a casual attempt, but you're not an expert at doing that, are you?
I tried to replicate the way that was said that the barrel checks were done.
Well, you didn't have the tool. You just said that.
Correct.
And did you do this outside?
It was done inside.
Yeah, and are you aware the light is quite a bit different when you do it outside?
Correct.
So you said even doing it inside under less favorable lighting conditions, you were still able to see some light coming through it, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't replicate it outside, did you?
No, that's why I used a light source.
Okay, and you knew this was being done outside on the rust side.
I would assume so, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it was done inside as well.
Well, you don't know that.
Correct.
So you're assuming. So your demonstration did not repeat the same conditions either that were done on the rust side, did it?
Again, I can't say the exact way that it was done on rust.
Okay.
Thank you. Next witness.
State called Mike Primo.
Okay, we do have more witnesses. Mike Primo. Yep. Dave Hall's broke bad.
You stand before the judge, raise your hand.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, have a seat, talking to the microphone. Do you need any water?
Thank you, Your Honor. Floor would be great, thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you state your full name for the record, please?
Good afternoon. Michael Allen Primo.
Mr. Primo, how are you currently employed?
Primo.
I am employed through a company called Primo Forensics, where I am a partner. The firm specializes in the analysis of digital multimedia evidence, so audio recordings, video recordings, and image recordings used in litigation.
Digital forensics expert.
Can you summarize for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury your education and background and experience in this field?
Sure. So I began my education and training with the University of Lawrence Technological University in Southfield, Michigan. I obtained a bachelor's in audio engineering technology. From there, I started getting training from LEVA, which is the Law Enforcement and Emergency Services Video Association. I pursued LEVA training 1 through 4 and became a certified forensics video technician. I've also received training in the products for image and video enhancement through one of the popular vendors is Amped, as well as Input Ace, formerly known as Axon Investigate. I've also received training from Leica in the analysis and use of 3D laser scanning technology, Medex Forensics, which is another forensic tool used to authenticate multimedia evidence. And I think that covers it.
Do you belong to any professional or scientific organizations?
I do. I'm currently a member of SWIGDE, which is the Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence. They're an organization that generates best practices in digital multimedia forensics, as well as digital forensics. So audio forensics, video forensics, image forensics, computer forensics, which includes cell phone forensics. And then they also have a quality committee that handles the quality control for digital forensics. I'm currently serving as the video chair with the video committee. I'm also a member of the Audio Engineering Society, the International Association for Identification, and LEVA.
And sir, can you, how long have you been in this field?
I've been practicing for a little over 10 years now.
And during that time, who have some of your clients been or parties that you've assisted?
So I've worked for both sides of the court on criminal as well as civil cases. So both the defense as well as the plaintiff for civil cases, and for criminal cases, the prosecution and the defense. I've contracted for the DOD, the DOJ, the FBI, the FDA, and several attorney general's offices. So a lot of attorneys.
And specifically, have you been qualified as an expert in the areas of audio or video and image forensics?
Yes, I have.
How many times have you been qualified as an expert in those areas?
I have given testimony as an expert a little over a dozen times in various courts throughout the United States. And then I've also provided deposition testimony, probably about the same, maybe a little more.
Your Honor, I would ask the court to recognize Mr. Primo as an expert in the areas of audio, video, and image forensics.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, so you are recognized as an audio, video, image forensics expert.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can everyone hear me okay? I feel like I'm not talking directly into the microphone. That's a little better. Thank you.
The acoustics in the room are a little strange.
Okay, it's good to know.
How did you become involved in this case?
We were contacted initially to examine several sources of digital images that were captured from a variety of devices by Ms. Morrissey.
And did you prepare a report?
Yes, I did.
And was your work peer reviewed?
Yes, my work was technically peer reviewed by a colleague of similar qualifications.
And is that what peer review means? You give it to someone else in the field and they double check your work?
That's correct, to ensure the accuracy of the application of the methodology, as well as the opinions offered. It's recommended that reports are technically peer reviewed by a colleague that has similar qualifications.
Okay. I'm going to show you some exhibits. We're going to get ourselves set up. Mr. Bowles, do you want to come up here and have a look? Don't.
Uh-oh,
don't look
technology,
around on that one.
technology.
Just a second.
So it'll be interesting to see what this guy's testifying to in terms of the digital forensics. Looks like he looked at a lot of different devices from a lot of different people. Are they going to be debunking? Yeah, maybe it's break time again. Um, so perhaps some of the images were sketchy, questionable in terms of their origin, or whether they were changed in any way before they were turned over. Not sure.
All right. Mr. Primo, I am showing you what is already admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 118. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And is this an image that I provided you to do some enhancement on?
It appears so, yes.
And is there a particular part of this image that you were asked to enhance or clarify?
Yes, so the area specific.
George, will you show him how he can touch and clear?
Okay, so this is a touch screen.
I know, it's a great name. Yo, Primo.
That works. So the arrow indicates the section of the image that was the focus of the request, which appears to be some sort of ammunition for enhancement as well as enlargement of the image.
Okay, I'm going to show you what I have marked as State's Exhibit 178. And I would ask the court to admit it, and I would ask for permission to publish.
No objection.
Page 178 is admitted. You may publish.
Mr. Primo, can you explain to the jury what we're looking at in State's Exhibit 178?
Sure. So the tool that was used primarily throughout the course of the investigation is called AMP5, which is a audio or an image and video analysis tool, not audio analysis, with which when you bring the image into the tool, it performs a non-destructive workflow that allows us to clarify or identify specific regions of the imagery, which is shown on the right-hand side of the screen as the clarified identification for the version that was enhanced. Clarification and enhancement kind of are synonymous with the legal admissibility. The image on the left is a specific filter arrangement in the tool that allows us to compare what was originally cropped or selected and then what was clarified, what processes were applied. So we can see, in accordance with best practices, what exactly happened between the two components, the two sections that were cropped.
So when you attempted to clarify the image, is there a reason that you weren't able to make it less blurry?
So I applied a de-blur, several de-blurring processes to try to clear up that blurriness that you're seeing in the image. And they were unsuccessful at being able to accurately make it so that it was perfectly in focus again. So there were likely a number of reasons as to why that portion of the imagery became blurry. So light level adjustments were applied. If memory serves, sharpening, which improves the edge detail against different edges. And then of course, enlargement or resizing of the image.
And sir, the fact that this portion of the image that I asked you to take a close look at, the fact that that is in the background of the photo, how does that affect things?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, if I go back to Is the ammunition in the foreground of the photo or the background?
It's in the background, yes.
How does that affect whether it's blurry or not, if it does?
It doesn't necessarily affect it from a clarification perspective. It wasn't so far out of blur that I would consider it unreliable to make determinations from. We can still see a lot of information in that background. It wasn't like those objects were several hundred feet or even further away from the focus of the camera. But that being further back in the scene does complicate our ability to de-blur it effectively.
And is that because they are blurry in the original image?
Yes, they're out of focus on some level, yes.
All right. I'm going to go back to State's Exhibit 178. Just by looking at the images, are you able to, do you notice different colors of metal in the center of what appears to be ammunition?
I do, yes.
What are those colors?
The colors appear to be visually dissimilar in terms of color as well as light. The area depicted here as with the arrow, the center part, my understanding is that it's some sort of primer of that ammunition component, is a darker region than the area that's depicted by this arrow on the right, which is brighter.
Okay, thank you, sir. And I'm showing you what is already in evidence as State's Exhibit 162, where you provided this image for clarification and forensic work.
Yes, I was.
And was there a particular part of this image that I asked you to focus on?
Yes, so the section identified by the arrow here is the section of the screen that was of interest for clarification, so enhancement, as well as resizing or enlargement of that imagery.
And were you able to enlarge and clarify that image?
Yes, that section of the image was suitable for clarification, and then exhibits were generated, enlarged. In the compare and original format that we saw earlier, where it's the side-by-side, as well as a picture-in-picture style within the tool AMP5.
How do you know whether or not the image is appropriate for clarification?
There are several components that we evaluate when we receive the images. Things like, are the objects high enough resolution or pixels? So every picture is made up of lots of little squares that are pixels. And if the resolution of that picture is limited, then the enlargement process could produce inaccurate results for clarifying or making that image bigger. In addition, the position of those objects within the scene, the light level of that scene. So is the image too dark that we can't actually restore or enhance those sections to make them more visible to the human eye? As well as things like compression, image compression or data compression, which can reduce the amount of information that was originally captured by the device or introduce information that wasn't originally there. So we evaluate all of these components prior to engaging with an enhancement and applying that enhancement methodology, which was ultimately reported back to Ms. Morrissey prior to beginning.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to show you what I have marked as State's Exhibit, is it 176? Your Honor, for the record, Mr. Bowles does not have an objection to any of these exhibits. So I would ask that 176 be admitted into evidence and obviously for publishing.
176 is admitted and may publish.
Mr. Primo, what are we looking at here?
This is a clarified exhibit that depicts that region of interest, which is demonstrated in the lower right-hand corner, that has been enhanced using sharpness, light level adjustments, as well as it's a picture-in-picture style, but a zoom, if you will, of the area of interest, which is the ammunition and it appears to be some sort of container.
Thank you. This is State's Exhibit 177. I'd like to move it into evidence and publish it.
No objection, Your Honor.
177 is admitted. You may publish.
Mr. Primo, can you describe what we're looking at here?
This is a demonstrative exhibit that shows the original frame picture that was processed or clarified on the left-hand side of the screen, which has been, if memory serves, rotated slightly so that we can better see it within this exhibit. Light level adjustments, so shadow and highlight improvements, sharpening, and then enlargement of the pixel region. So that's the original version. And then on the right-hand side, all of those processes were applied, a side-by-side exhibit.
Are you able to see, just by using your eyes, a slight difference in the color of the primers of the ammunition on the top area of that styrofoam insert and the ammunition here in this lower section?
Yes. So these two things that we're evaluating are visually dissimilar. Oh,
Look at the screen, Stacy. The thumb is pulling back the hammer. And you can pull
in
that
terms
back
of light and color.
before shoot. You pull that back before shooting a revolver.
You have testified that you can see the difference. Are there some things that you can do in order to verify that that they are actually different colors?
There are some tests that we can apply to analyze that information on a deeper level, which is at its core evaluating how the technology works. So in this case, it was some sort of Apple device, iOS device, and whether or not that information that was being collected by the electronics within that device was being accurately communicated to that digital format. So there's a test that I applied throughout the analysis. On this particular image, I was not confident in my ability to do so.
To verify it.
Correct. To verify that those tonal values, those color and luma values are in fact dissimilar.
So just to be clear, your testimony is you can see the difference, but you're not able to digitally verify it.
That's correct.
Okay.
So Solo, if we ever get a trial with
Let's
swords, you'll be able
switch
to
over for
be our
video.
swords
And
expert.
of course, unfortunately, that requires me to change devices. Thank you for your patience.
More technology, more technology. So my understanding from Alex's story is that this is basically what he had done, is he pulled the hammer back, but didn't put his hand on the trigger. This is a much more modern gun than what he was using. But it gives you the idea of what they're talking about. And this person is demonstrating proper gun handling when you pull the hammer back, because you're supposed to have your finger not anywhere near the trigger, is my understanding.
I would like to play what has been marked as State's Exhibit 187. Your Honor, the foundation for these videos was laid by the gentleman from Production Outfitters, and I would ask for permission to publish. Sorry, 187.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, 187 is admitted. You may publish.
Sir, were you asked to review a couple of videos and take those videos and enhance still frames within the videos?
Yes, I think it was, if memory serves, more than a couple, but yes.
Okay. This is State's Exhibit 187. Do you recognize this video?
I do, yes.
And is this one of the videos that you digitally enhanced for me?
That is correct.
You know, and quite frankly, I understand that we can't hear it, but whatever is being said is not relevant. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the audio. Okay.
Okay, understood.
And what specifically were you asked to do with regard to this video? What was I asking you to look for and try to enhance?
The pixel regions are the areas depicting the ammunition within what's my understanding is a bandolier that Mr. Baldwin is attempting to wear. Several still images were extracted from the video recording for clarification.
And can you see the ammunition with the primer side of the ammunition facing the camera in this still frame?
That is correct.
Would this be an example of some of the still frames that you collected from this video at my request?
I would have to examine the specific video image numbers, but it was in this range that it becomes most visible. I'm uncertain if it's this exact video image. Every video image in a video recording is marked with a frame number, so we count them. We can count them in a linear fashion. I would have to examine the project to know if definitively if it was this video image, but it was in this series of time.
It was
Yes.
one of these still frames in this video,
Correct. Yes.
and perhaps more than one.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. I am going to play for you State's Exhibit 188. Same issue, Your Honor. Foundation was laid by Production Outfitters, and I would like to move it into evidence and ask permission to publish.
No objection.
States 188 is admitted. You may publish.
Mr. Primo, were you asked to do basically the same thing with this video?
That is correct.
When the camera was zoomed in here at the beginning, were you able to collect some still frames of the ammunition in that holster?
That is correct.
All right. Because we have to switch devices, I'm going to show you another video from a different time frame.
Okay.
And then we'll move back to the images. So I'm going to show you what is already in evidence as State's Exhibit 164. Do you recognize this video?
I do. Yes.
Is this another video that you were asked to conduct a forensic analysis on?
So this video, the way that this device works is actually recording several pictures. And the tool that allows us to interpret those images plays them back in rapid succession, giving the effect that it's a video. This is a product of that proprietary tool from that particular vendor of the camera. But in answer to your question, yes, it is a video, but in its raw format, there are actually multiple pictures.
And what kind of a camera is this? Do you remember what it's called?
This is an RE Alexa Mini, if memory serves.
And in terms of good cameras, bad cameras, sophisticated cameras, simple cameras, where does this camera fall?
The lay interpretation is it's kind of like the Lamborghini of cameras. It's a very high-end tool in comparison to other devices.
All right, thank you, sir. Can you see the ammunition there on the left-hand side?
Yes, I don't know for a fact that it is ammunition, but it's my understanding that those are casings of some sort. But yes, that's
Right.
what it appears to be.
Okay. And is it somewhere in this area where you were able to isolate some still frames? And I'll go ahead and play it for you there.
That is correct. In preparation for my report from my investigation, 4 instances, 4 images were extracted from the tool in a raw RGB TIFF format. In preparation for testimony, additional images were extracted for review.
They have to change devices again. IT guys like, Jesus.
And for the record, I am going to show Mr. Primo States Exhibit 179 through 186. I believe there isn't an objection. I'd like to have them admitted and permission to publish.
No objection.
Page 179 through 186 is admitted. You may publish.
Thank you. Mr. Primo, I'm showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 179. Can you describe to us what we're looking at here?
This is frame 237 from one of the 2 of the digital video files that we saw that didn't have audio playback. That frame on the left-hand side of the screen is what's been cropped as the area of focus.
And let me stop you real quick.
Probably
As a point
safety.
of clarification, I showed you 2 videos of Mr. Baldwin putting on his bandolier, and then there was another video of Mr. Baldwin with a young man. Do you remember those?
Yes, the 2 with the putting on the bandolier is what I
Okay.
was referring to. Yes.
Oh, their monitor isn't working. Sorry.
You're devious, Anonymous Lucy. Maybe he does. He's like, oopsie doopsie, time for a break. More IT issues. I mean, haven't the courts figured out by now that they need better tech experts? I'm looking for the answer to your question of what the prosecutor's name is. Haven't found it yet, but I am finding that a special prosecutor in the case did step down just before the preliminary hearing back in May of last year.
We can try to do it with one monitor if they have difficulty fixing it. Is it possible to move it a little closer to, we don't need to look at it. We know what these images look like.
Well, let me wait.
Carrie Morrissey. I was thinking it was Morrissey, but I wasn't sure if I was right about that, so I didn't want to just blurt it out. But I think her name is Morrissey. Yes. Look at the Morrissey's like, oh my God, please, more tech issues. It's definitely a flow killer when you're in the middle of your, examination of a witness and you have to keep futzing with the technology. They need to figure this out for the courts. My God. Hello, Clarel. Clarel. Wait, they're having a sidebar with the witness? That's weird. A witness sidebar. I know exactly. This better be sorted out before July when they have the Alec Baldwin here the trial. Yeah, can you show us the photos? Can you give us the hard copies of the photos because
To come up. He went to get water for the jurors.
Sir, did you bring enough pictures to hand out to the class?
Go ahead.
Okay. Let me stop for just a moment. Mr. Primo, the first set of images that we were looking at with the styrofoam insert sitting on a person's leg and the ammunition in the background that was blurry, were you able to determine the dates that those images
Is there a
were
floppy
taken?
around here?
Yes, the examination of
Clarel.
the metadata, which is data about data from the photos, was evaluated in as a part of the enhancement process.
And what was the date?
The date that the metadata interpretation tool is reporting as the date time the original image was captured is October 10th, 2021 at approximately 9 a.m. 42:11 seconds.
Okay. And just to be clear, the videos that we showed you of Mr. Baldwin putting on his bandolier, were you able to determine the date of those?
I did not evaluate the date time created information from those videos,
Okay.
no.
But the jury can rely on the testimony of other witnesses for the appropriate dates for that. And then we'll get to the next one in a moment. So let's go ahead and begin again. States Exhibit 179, what are we looking at here?
This is a comparison of the specific region that was cropped, demonstrating the bandolier and the ammunition. At frame 237, I don't recall which video exhibit this came from. But as you can see here on the left, this is the original information that does not have any clarification, application of any clarification to it. The image on the right is a clarified version that uses resizing of that section to make it larger, light level adjustments, shadow and highlights, shadows, midtones, and highlights, and sharpening.
And sir, in both images, but in particular in the clarified image on the right, are you able to determine that one
Thank
of
you,
the
Anonymous.
supposed pieces of ammunition seems to have a silver coloring in the center?
Visually, yes. Objectively, through that deeper methodology that I talked about, no, we did not apply that method for verification.
Okay, let's move to State's Exhibit 180. Tell us what we're looking at here.
This is another instance, video image 218 from the video exhibit that was isolated. The section on the left-hand side that was cropped is from the original video image. The section on the right was clarified and enlarged. Similar processes were applied.
And in this image, when we compare it to the previous image, that being State's Exhibit 179, do you see that change in color, that silver type color in the same place in both images? And when I mean in the same place, on the same piece of ammunition, or rather where the ammunition is located?
That is correct. Yes, it's a lighter tonal value or representation, which is dissimilar than the other tonal values in chroma and luma, light and
Kathy.
color, that appears dissimilar.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 181.
I don't know, Stacy.
Tell us what we're looking at here.
This is frame 237. Similar processes were applied. The image on the left-hand side is the original that has not been resized from the video recording. The image on the right is the clarified version that has been resized, enhancement processes applied. And then the entire image was actually resized, I don't think I mentioned this, to format the screen that you're looking at in an HD resolution. So had we not performed that, it would have been a little bit smaller on the screen, because this section was the smallest that we enhanced. Smallest that I enhanced, because the resolution, the picture size from these videos was much smaller than the RE, which is a very high resolution, and even the photos from the iOS devices, the iPhones that were captured.
Okay. State's Exhibit 182. Tell us what this is.
This is another representation of frame 218. So when the images were enlarged, two different resizing methods were used to verify that the information that was being enlarged was accurately being done so and wasn't an inaccurate representation when it was made larger. This appears to be the other enhancement version. As you can see, it's kind of like more blocky, pixely, if that's a forensic term, on the right-hand side when it was enlarged.
And in all of the images that we've looked at in this group of images, 179 through 182, do you see the lighter colored primer in the same position, that being what appears to be the third piece of ammunition from the top?
That is correct.
State's Exhibit 183, what's this?
This is frame 175. If memory serves, this is from the other video recording because there's a clear indication of the front of the ammunition. I'm considering the front to be where the projectile is located. In which case, this exhibit on the left is the original section of the video image that was selected, cropped, enlarged. And the clarified version that has clarified processes applied. One particular process that wasn't included on the others is a process called deep blurring. So kind of refocusing that that image that we're seeing so it's clearer.
Can you see what appears to be that same silver coloring in the piece of ammunition that's third from the top?
It's more difficult to see in this version, but there are slight, the pixel information is there. Yes.
Okay. State's Exhibit 184, same question.
Thank you, Tiggy girl.
Same to everything.
The dissimilar, yeah, so the section on the left is the isolated version, clarified version on the right that has been resized, and there is a dissimilar tonal value visibly between those. Specifically, we examined the two ammunition that were side by side.
Okay, thank you. State's Exhibit 185, same thing, just different frame?
That is correct.
State's Exhibit 186, same thing, different frame?
This is another version of an alternate resizing algorithm that was used to make the image bigger for verification that no additional information was added to the recording that rendered determinations inaccurate. Like nothing was added to the video that misrepresents what was originally there.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let's move to the images that you were able to analyze from the RE video. I'm not going to play the video on this device because it will cause the system to crash. So I'm going to move to State's Exhibit 189. I would like to have 189 entered into evidence and permission to publish.
Is 189 this video?
No, 189 is the digital image that he created from the video.
Okay, no objection.
Case 189 submitted, you may publish.
All right, Mr. Primo, what are we
Yes,
looking
thank
at
you for
here?
avoiding the
And if
crash.
you recall, was there a date associated with the video from the RE?
May I have a moment to look at my report?
Certainly.
Thank you.
So I've been trying to understand, what what all this is going to lead up to, and it seems like they feel that there was some enhancement done to images that
The
were on
creation
certain
date
devices.
associated with the metadata from the RE Raw proprietary tool. It's a program that allows us to examine the images captured directly from the RE camera in their raw format, is reporting a date of October the 18th, 2021. This creation time is reporting 5:36 and 49 seconds.
Does that tell you that that's the exact date that the image was recorded on the camera?
In accordance with the data that the camera was communicating to the file, yes.
Okay. And what are you able to see in terms of this same pattern that we're looking for with regard to silver colored centers of what appears to be ammunition?
I don't understand the question.
Join the club,
Well,
Stacey.
let me back up. What are we looking at here? Or do we have an original and a clarified?
Yes, so the image on the left is a selection of that region of the, my understanding is it's a bandolier or storage of some sort of those ammunition. And then the image on the right is the clarified or enhanced version of that image on the left.
And are you able to see, just from looking at the photo, that the top two items appear to have silver centers where the last four appear to have a different color center?
They appear to be lighter in tonal values. I don't know if I can classify them as silver, but
Okay, understood. I'm sorry.
It appears to be, if I was asked what material that looks like, it looks like silver. But whether or not it actually is, I haven't been able to verify that. But yes, visually dissimilar.
And let me ask you, in terms of the date from the RE camera, does a date and time have to be set on the camera properly in order for you to receive that the proper information through the metadata for the date of the recording?
That is how most camera devices work. I don't recall specifically if the RE was set, this particular RE, by the operator, but that's common for digital cameras like the RE.
And were you, sir, able to do a tonal value analysis on this?
Yes, I was.
And again, the tonal value analysis is just a way of doing an additional verification. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what were the results of your tonal value analysis?
So with respect to the RE images, there were no artifacts due to compression. These images were captured in a raw format, which means when the light information hit the camera's components, which is called a sensor, it's going to capture that information in raw and communicate that to a digital file, with which it's not going to make determinations about what do we take away or what do we add to make this file smaller. An interpretation of that process was done using a filter within the AMP5 tool called channel selector. And that evaluates the specific RGB color spaces that those tonal values live essentially in that raw format. And through an evaluation of the green channel, which is the most sensitive to the human eye, there is a distinct dissimilarity in the luma and chrominance values between those two sections. And when these images were clarified, enhanced, 2 of the 4 images that I examined, through adding of light to make the images brighter, this section, the middle section of that piece of ammunition, i.e. the primer, became overexposed, which means it had brighter values than other primers throughout that picture. And the tool reported that those values were going beyond the technology's ability to capture it. So what does that mean? It means that that section was documented by that device brighter than the other primers throughout the picture.
Would you say that the use of the tonal value analysis did in fact verify that? It verified that it is brighter than the others?
That is correct.
Sorry about that. And States Exhibit 190, we would ask the court to move this into evidence and publish.
No objection, Your Honor.
Case 190 is admitted. You may publish.
Mr. Primo, what are we looking at here?
This is a exhibit that demonstrates the selected area, approximate selected area, as the other images we saw, but it's not in the compare original format. It's just a picture-in-picture that is clarified, enhanced.
All right, thank you, sir. Were you also asked to perform a forensic analysis on still frames from a body-worn camera worn by a police officer?
That is correct.
And for the record, just so that the jury is aware, the body-worn camera that Mr. Primo analyzed was States Exhibit 2. I'm not going to play it because you already have it. We've already watched it. I will, however, pull up State's Exhibit 192 and ask the court to admit 192 and permission to publish.
No objection, Your Honor.
192 is admitted, you may publish.
Mr. Primer, what are we looking at here?
This is a video image that was selected from the BWC
Prime
recording.
O and Alexa. I mean,
I don't recall from the file title which particular frame this was, but it's a picture-in-picture process using Annotate. We can select that portion of the screen and enlarge it, resize it, add additional enhancement processes, including adjustments to the lighting, sharpening as well. So it's an enhanced version of that frame with a picture-in-picture effect.
And the label of that box still appears to be pretty blurry and not legible. Were you not able to clarify it any more than that?
That is correct.
Okay.
The compression artifacts as a result of the spatial resolution, the video quality was insufficient to enhance to make that kind of identification.
And when you say the video quality was insufficient, is there a considerable difference between the quality of a police officer's body-worn camera, this type of camera in particular, and a camera such as the RE camera that was being used on the set of Rust?
Yes, a body-worn camera, although effective, its design is to surveil. It's a surveillance camera that's worn by an officer, so they record for long periods of time. Significant differences in intended use between a cinematography camera and a body-worn camera.
And finally, let's have a look at State's Exhibit 191. Looks like these aren't too different, but go ahead and tell us what you did.
This is the original information that was selected with the enhancement tool on the left-hand side, and then a compare original filter was applied to demonstrate the clarified version with processes to enhance it.
And why does it appear that there is actually less detail in terms of the label on the box in the clarified image as opposed to the original image? Let me ask you this. When you clarify an image, do you brighten it?
Yes, it's one of the processes to brighten it. If memory serves, when I was trying to enhance for the request was to examine any identifiers on the box, not specifically that little 2 lines of some sort of information, but to see if there were any identifiers anywhere on that container. So the light was improved to be able to examine that.
Can brightening an image actually reduce some of the detail in the image?
It can, yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'll pass the witness.
Cross-exam.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Primo, how much were you paid for your work in this case and your report? And
you called it, Stacy. You called
The
it.
firm Primo Forensics was compensated a value somewhere in the 10,000 range.
in the process that you were hired to do, you take images like a picture, or you extract one from media, and then you use tools to try to clarify them. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier in your testimony, there's certain things that can cause distortion. I think you said if something's low resolution, is that right?
I don't remember saying specifically distortion.
Okay. Yeah, just tell me, what are some of the things that can cause you not to be able to get that clarification?
I don't understand the question.
In some of the images, it looked like at the end, the ones we couldn't see anything. It didn't clarify it, so we couldn't see what was on the box. What, what prevents that? The resolution originally, or why can't you get that?
The resolution does play a factor in that, as well as the compression level. So at what point the camera is limiting information to that digital video file. Those are two components, yes.
Okay. You also said in some of the pictures you could not verify tonal differences. And if I say it wrong, just tell me. But you did a verification process and you couldn't confirm.
That is correct. I was not confident to apply that particular methodology because there were so many unknown variables.
Okay. So given that there's so many unknown variables, some of them you can say that there were tonal differences, like color differences. Some of them you can't. Is that fair?
I don't understand the question.
Some of these pictures, you can't be confident that there are tonal differences. Some of them that you looked at, is that what you just said?
I would have to evaluate the particular image
Okay.
to answer that question. Maybe we can show one of them.
Sure. Yeah, there were some of them you said I couldn't verify, and we can go back to the number of that. But I'm just trying to get that. Basically, what you did was you clarified and enhanced pictures, and some of them you can tell us the colors are different. Some of them you can't. Is that right?
That is fair to say that the dissimilarities could
Oh
not
my,
be
so low.
verified in terms of how that technology was actually working when it captured those values. Yes.
And your technology has got to be much more sophisticated. But it's like, you're familiar with iPhones, people can use filters, they can use edits, that kind of thing.
I'm familiar, yes.
Okay, but yours, I mean, basically, you must be using a much more sophisticated tool, correct?
It's a peer reviewable tool that allows us to apply methodology that is widely accepted. So it's repeatable, it's verifiable. It can be evaluated by people of similar qualifications to ensure that it was being applied correctly and effectively to accurately improve the information that's contained within them. I would say it's relative with respect to sophistication as to what we're comparing it to.
To an iPhone?
To a filter.
Oh, to a
I
filter.
think iPhone filter is what you had said.
Yes, iPhone filter. Yeah.
But yeah, to a one-to-one comparison, we'd probably have to evaluate which particular filter, but there's no magic in the tool if that's what I think we're trying to evaluate.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to ask. So it's similar to a filter.
They are filters. That's correct, yes.
Okay.
The filters that are being applied.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing for you.
Redirect.
Yeah, just very briefly. Sir, in the images from the videos of Mr. Baldwin putting on the bandolier, those two videos that you extracted images from, the fact that you see the same color difference in the primer of the piece of ammunition that is in the third position from the top, the fact that you are able to see that color difference repeatedly in different frames, is that some indication of reliability that that center primer is actually a different color than the others? Does that make sense?
I think so, yes. So with respect to forensic image video analysis, we're evaluating things from an objective perspective. There are components to that methodology that evaluate context, and they are best practices. I was not asked to evaluate those things with this case. If I understand your question, I think I do. From a contextual perspective, yes, it does, because there are multiple instances across multiple frames with each of the devices that capture digital video files, which means more images than just one, like an iPhone. So yes, contextually, it does demonstrate that. Yes.
Some additional level of reliability.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. I don't have anything else.
You're excused, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The state rests.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to take our break for the day. I have.
The state has
court,
rested.
I need to do at 4 o'clock. So the state is rested, so the defense will go forward. Counsel, please approach for a minute.
So presumably starting tomorrow, the state starts putting on their case. I'm sorry, the defense. The state rests. We rest. It's interesting. They didn't end on a bang, right? They didn't like build up to a big climax and on a bang, kind of like what the state did with Adam Montgomery. You really felt like they ended on a bang. And a lot of prosecutors will do that. They you have a black cat that's almost 20 years old. My gosh. That's amazing. Anyway, so they're gonna start their case tomorrow. So it'll be interesting to see what their case is and what witnesses they bring up and if they bring her up as a witness. Wow, a million sparkles. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, it was kind of like a fizzling out. And that was not ending, and it's kind of, it feels awkward to say ending on a bang in a case like this where there's a shooting, but you know what I mean. They usually they try to bring everything into some sort of very like an emotional context. They bring on the most emotional testimony, that also has the chance to prove their case. So, but you don't always have to do that. You don't always have to do that. As long as you got all of the elements of your case in, you got all the evidence in. And in all honesty, I'm not totally clear on what was just testified
All right,
to.
so tomorrow morning, we're going to have a couple of housekeeping matters. So you all should be downstairs at 10, not 8:30, 10. Okay. So I see that's.
I can set my alarm for a little
good news
later.
for a fair amount of you. All right. So please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court. Don't do any research about the
You'll bet another
productions
technology
or
issue break.
the movie set, et cetera, and the trial. So downstairs at 10. Okay. All right. Did I say the part? Oh, don't talk among yourselves. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
All rise.
Yeah. So this was a rather dry, somewhat boring day of testimony. It was very technical. This last witness was very technical. Couldn't even totally discern what he was proving for the state, unless you guys get it. Hannah does look defeated. I feel like they thought that they were going to get some wins with the Seth Kenney testimony. She looks nervous. She looks like she's about to faint, actually. Let's see if they say anything else. Nope, looks like they're not going to be saying anything else for us. So, I feel like they were they thought maybe when they got Seth Kenney on the stand, they'd be able to get to poke holes and put more of the onus on him, or show that he was so disorganized that he could have gotten the live ammo into, into the mix, into the stream, such that it was confused for everybody else. But ultimately, it's the armorer's job to make sure that that every single bullet she's putting into a gun is the right bullet. Yeah, I'm sure it's taken a huge toll on her. I'm sure it has. So I will plan to stream this again tomorrow, although this was, a bit of a boring day, but it'll be interesting to see what the prosecute. Gosh, I keep saying the wrong thing. What the defense puts on as their case, how many witnesses, whether Hannah testifies. And I wonder if her very nervous looking person is because she's planning to testify. Because that seems to be when they get the most nervous. I remember when Charlie Adelson went up to testify, he looked like he was about to faint himself. So, all right. I will see you all tomorrow. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Don't eat too much ice cream or watch too many Ozempic ads. They might not put anybody up. That's right, Tiger Girl. They might have said that they rest today, though, if they aren't going to do that. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, may the Ozempic ads pass you up while you're eating your ice cream and your other snacks. All right. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for the thumbs up. Thanks for the super chats and the gifted memberships. And we'll be back. We will be back for Disorder in the Court. Thanks for being here.